Positive energy all the time. Good to see you all. Hope you're having a great day. Rep your city. Rep your city. You know how we do. Rep your city. You already know the program. Tonight I got an interesting conversation for sure because I'm wondering why is there any type of discrepancy about reparations for foundational Black Americans. That's what I'm about to discuss because it's really not making much sense. But we're going to talk about it. Come on in, rep your city, rep your city. While we get into this, okay, we got, what cities we got here today? Okay, I'm representing Chicago, you know how it is, aka the Windy City. Shout out to everybody on Facebook, everybody on Kick, everybody on Twitch, and everybody on YouTube. We got Indianapolis in the building. We got Greensboro in the house. We got Plainsville in the house. We got San Jose, Atlanta in the building. Rep your city. We got Dallas in the building. We got the great city of New York in the building. We got Texarkana in the building. Shreveport is in the building. We got Anniston, Alabama in the building. Oh, tell grandson I said much love and respect. I'm going to be doing more videos on stuff like that, raising children, respecting your parents, and all of that. We're going to talk about all that. Tell him I said salute. Tell your husband I said happy birthday. He's doing big things. I'm proud of him. He's hanging in there. Tell him to keep taking care of his health and hang in there. Don't give up. Yeah, tell your husband I said don't give up. Hang in there. Tell him don't give up. Put his faith in God and try to eat the best he can. Okay? Tell him put his faith in God. He down south, tell him them vegetables are strong and their fruit down there is strong. So he know what to do. Hit them vegetables and them good old country vegetables and that good fruit down there, and it'll definitely sustain him. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. He right there where the food is fresh with a lot of nutrition. And he's strong as an ox, so he'll be all right. We got Orlando in the building. Who else we got in the building? Rep your city, rep your city. Now, I'm a little confused. It's Black History Month. And our battle for reparations, the United States government, a lot of people act like they don't understand our battle for reparations. I'm totally confused because every February we show why we do reparations. Am I wrong? Am I tripping? Black History Month, every year we show all the atrocities that happened to foundational Black Americans. We show all of the robberies, all of the land that was stolen, all the abuse that happened since we've been in the country. How does Black History Month not validate reparations? Will somebody explain that to me? Without these abuses, there wouldn't be a Black History Month. It would just be American history, and our history would be included. The fact that Black history, the history of foundational Black Americans, is separate shows you discrimination, abuse, and loss of wages, robbery. Make every Black History Month, we show all the inventions that was stolen from us, all the patents that was taken from us. Is that not proof that reparations is due? So there's actually a holiday in America, Black History Month, a period of Black history which shows every year proof that reparations is due. Or am I tripping? Am I tripping? Black History Month don't validate reparations? What? If you take all of the information from Black History Month and take it to any court, it would prove that we're supposed to be better off than how we are. It would show redlining. It would show everything. It would show how when Black servicemen got their Social Security check, white male men would tear up their checks. Did you know that? Did you know when Black men got out the military and they got checks in the mail, white male men would tear it up so they wouldn't get their benefits? Their application for their benefits, white male men would tear it up. You know how many Black servicemen never got their benefits? Never received a letter to fill out to get their benefits? I'm just trying to understand how there's a debate for reparations and Black History Month. Black History Month is 75% abuse, 25% our accomplishments, all our great inventors and all that. But it's 75% bad things. I'm trying to figure out how a people that's supposed to be American citizens need to use a green book because they could only go to certain hotels and certain gas stations, certain businesses. How is that not proof of discrimination? And how does that not prove that there was obviously discrimination in the workforce? There was obviously discrimination on the payment for the slaves, that obviously Black Americans have been mistreated in this country from day one. Obviously, we didn't get paid for our work. That would be obvious. That if you were in a white American country where you got to have a book to know where you can go, who would believe that they would pay you fair wages when you was picking cotton, that they didn't rob you? How could you be in a country that's racist all the way up to the 40s, 50s, and 60s? How could you say they didn't cheat the people back in the 1800s, 1700s? Obviously, those people got cheated. Obviously, the same people you discriminating against, you didn't just start doing that. And when you were in power to have them work, it's obvious you did not pay those people. If they can't go to a restroom without being lynched, make it make some kind of sense. And imagine a foundation of Black Americans saying, we don't supposed to get reparations. What kind of loser would that be? That would be a person that knows no history. There is no way you can know the details of history, the history of our struggle in this country. There would be no way that you would not be for reparations. Even Donald Trump admitted that we deserve reparations. He said it. And I believe we got a better chance getting reparations with Donald Trump than we had from any Democratic president, because he would be in the power to do it and whites would have to just accept it. They wouldn't be able to question him. So I'm trying to figure out how men that's just trying to ride the bus go to jail, arrested for trying to stand up for us to have equal rights. How does that not prove we didn't have equal rights? How does this picture not prove that we were discriminated against? Economically, socially, and in every other way. If we can't get on the bus, you're telling me, Daddy, you ain't cheaters? If we can't even get on the bus and ride, sit where we want? You telling me that you was fair with our wages when we was picking the cotton and picking all the crops? There's no way you were fair then and unfair now. You've been unfair the whole time. Make it make some sense. Like make this make some type of sense. Black History Month validates reparations. How doesn't it? When Black History Month is based off of abuse, it's based off of being cheated, it's based off of being mistreated. How do now, when we know you discriminated with housing, even way after slavery, you kept us economically down systematically? Yeah, everybody knows about redlining now. So I'm trying to figure out how, with all this information of discrimination, redlining, and all this, how could you even open your mouth to say reparations is not due? Now that we know the cotton industry is hiding the money, yeah, you can't see how much money the cotton industry got. They got it hidden. Now that we know all of these companies that got rich off of slavery, you trying to tell me that reparations is not due with all of this history? That makes no sense. Like there's too much history to deny reparations. Like seriously. Especially when you see a black American. Now I can understand some black immigrants because, there's just a lot of hate there with them. I don't know what's up with them. It makes you wonder if we ever should have accepted them at all. But with this type of information, look at this information and tell me, with this information being known, that reparations is not due. Just watch this.
13 corporations that profited from slavery. So here we go. Number 1, J.P. Morgan Chase. Between 1831 and 1865, 2 predecessor banks, Citizens Bank and Canal Bank in Louisiana, accepted approximately 13,000 enslaved individuals as collateral on loans and took ownership of approximately 1,250 of them when the plantation owners defaulted on the loans. Number 2, New York Life, an insurance company, sold insurance policies on enslaved Africans. Number 3, Wachovia. 2 historical predecessors owned enslaved Africans and accepted them as payment. Number 4, N.M. Rothschild and Sons Bank in London. Nathan Mayer Rothschild, the banking family's 19th century patriarch, made personal gains by using enslaved Africans as collateral in dealings with a slave owner. I have a list of this, so if I stumble, it's because I have a lot of chicken scratch. Number 4, Norfolk Southern, offered slaveholders $180, that's $3,379 today. This article was written in 2013. So that's $3,379 today a piece for enslaved Africans they would rent to the railroad for 1 year. The Central Georgia, another company aligned with Norfolk Southern Line today, valued slaves at $31,303. Today that would be $663,033. Did I say that right? Yes. $663,033. Hopefully that came out right. Sounds weird. Number 5, U.S. Today found that their parent company, E.W. Scripps and Gannett, had links to the slave trade. Number 6, Fleet Boston, evolved from an early financial institution. Providence Bank founded John Brown, who was a slave trader and owned ships used to transport enslaved Africans. The bank financed Brown's slave voyages and profited from them. Brown even reportedly helped charter what became Brown University. Number 7, CSX used slave labor to construct portions of U.S. rail lines under the political and legal system that was in place more than a century ago. Two enslaved Africans were John Henry and Reuben. The record states they were to be returned clothed when they arrived to work for the company. Number 8, Canadian National Railway Company. The Mobile and Ohio, now part of Canadian National, valued their slaves lost to the war and emancipation at $199,691 on record. That amount is currently worth $2.2 million. Whew. Number 9, Brown Brothers Harriman, the oldest and largest private investment bank, founded 1818, owned hundreds of enslaved Africans and financed the cotton economy by lending millions to Southern planters, merchants, and cotton brokers. Number 10, Brooks Brothers, high-end suit retailer, got their start selling slave clothes to various slave traders in the 1800s. They got their start by selling slave clothes to Southern planters, merchants, and cotton brokers. Number 10, Brooks Brothers, high-end suit retailer, got their start selling slave clothes to various slave traders in the 1800s. They got their start by selling slave clothes. Number 11, Barclays, British multinational banking and financial services company headquartered in London, has now conceded that companies brought over the years may have been involved in the slave trade. Number 12, Lehman Brothers. This business empire started in the slave trade. Quote from Joe Pelizotto: "This is a sad part of our history or our heritage. We're deeply apologetic. It was a terrible thing. There's no one sitting in the United States in the year 2005, hopefully, who would ever in a million years defend the practice." 13, Aetna. Aetna? Aetna. U.S. largest health insurer, apologized for selling policies in the 1850s that reimbursed slave owners for financial losses when the enslaved Africans they owned died. Aetna has long acknowledged that for several years shortly after its founding in 1853, that the company may have insured the lives of slaves. A few other corporations, companies that profited from slavery: Princeton, Harvard Law School, Tiffany & Co., Bank of America, Yale University, and Wells Fargo.
Now, you heard all these multi-million-dollar and billion-dollar companies that were invested in slavery, right? So answer me this. Why is it every time we bring up reparations, they talk about tax dollars from the government? Why they don't ever talk about these companies putting the money back up to pay for the billions they made from slavery? Y'all don't think that's a trick? Every time you bring up reparations, they say the government, the taxpayers got to pay it. But you just heard they made millions of dollars selling slave clothes, selling slaves, selling products connected to slavery. And they never talk about these companies putting up the money that they made from slavery. They always run a trick and start talking about tax dollars and start talking about white Americans having to pay for slavery. Not Brooks Brothers, not none of these railroads, not none of these banks. All of these banks, Chase Banks and all of them, got the money for reparations, made money for reparations. But every time you talk about reparations, they start talking about taxes. That's not a trick. What do taxes got to do with businesses getting rich from slavery? Why would white American citizens got to pay for slavery when it was the businesses, multi-billion-dollar businesses, that's got the money that could pay the money? It wouldn't even hurt them. What's up with that? What's up with that? You've never seen them talk about the businesses paying back the money they made from slavery. They always start talking about taxes. American taxpayers shouldn't have to pay slavery. You're right. Wells Fargo, Chase Bank, all these big railroads, all these big clothing companies, they ain't supposed to pay it. The businesses that made the money from the free labor is supposed to pay it. And yes, the federal government got to pay some too, because you legally allowed it, which means the federal government worked with the businesses to help the businesses get rich from free labor. Other than that, it would have been illegal federally. So the United States government got to go into there. They don't got to take it from the tax dollars. They can go into their coffers, into the money they got, and they can get with the businesses and make the businesses put up 75%, the government put up 25%. Done. Won't hurt the taxpayers none. You could take some of that money you wasting going to the moon and give us our money. Because without our money, you wouldn't have had no money to go to the moon. You wouldn't have had no money for military. Slavery paid for everything in this country that they had. That was the free profits that put America ahead of other countries. America was ahead of other countries because foundational Black Americans was doing free labor when other countries had to pay for labor. Any economist that was honest would say that. How did America become ahead? How did America have the best afford all this military? Because you was not paying people that was bringing money into the country. And you can't say it don't come from tax dollars because these companies was paying America tax. So if a company makes money from slavery, from free labor, makes a lot of money for their business, and then pays taxes to the United States government, that tax money comes from slavery. All them tax dollars that America took from businesses that was involved in slavery was slave tax money, was taxes from free labor, from slavery, from abuse, human trafficking. I don't know why they won't call slavery human trafficking. Human trafficking. Companies in America got rich that paid taxes to the United States government, and they all made money from human trafficking of Black people. And now everybody's playing stupid and saying, well, why should they don't want to say mention none of the banks. They keep mentioning taxpayers. Y'all don't see that game? Why they keep mentioning taxpayers? Why they don't mention all them companies I just showed? Why they never mention them when it comes to paying for reparations? Why they don't never mention Wells Fargo? Why they don't never mention Chase? Why they don't never mention the railroads? Why? Why they don't mention the cotton industry, the tobacco industry, the sugar industry? Why they don't mention the farming industry? Why they only say taxpayers got to pay it? So you're telling me that companies become billionaire companies from free labor, and when it's time to pay, They don't got to pay. You start pretending that the citizens would have to pay and give these companies a pass. Why is that? Why they never bring up the companies that made billions? Why, when we ask for reparations, they never mention the companies that made billions? Why do they start talking about taxpayers? What do taxpayers got to do with Chase and Wells Fargo getting rich? That has nothing to do with taxpayers. Why? So they can make white Americans be against reparations when white Americans ain't Wells Fargo. White Americans ain't Chase. White Americans ain't Standard Oil and Shell and all of them. All of them. The railroad, the steamboat industry, the people that made the equipment, the people that sold the seeds to the farmers or to the plantation owners, all of them made money off of slavery. Every company from every crop that was grown and picked by slaves owe reparations. If we pick beans and you built your company selling beans, you owe money. They are intentionally hiding companies that made money. They say cotton, but you knew we grow. Y'all know we did more than pick cotton. Y'all knew we grew a bunch of stuff. So you telling me all down south, all the slaves grew was cotton? Well, how Americans was eating. So you telling me the slaves didn't grow all this food America was eating for free? Slaves didn't grow lima beans? Slaves didn't pick the oranges, the apples? Y'all believe that? Y'all don't believe the slaves picked all this fruit and all these vegetables? Who grew the food that Americans was eating? Why would they pay somebody to grow the food when they got black people from human trafficking to grow the food? Why they never mention the food industry? What food did we? I've been down south. They didn't just grow cotton. They grew all the food in America down south. Why they keep just mentioning cotton? Because they're trying to protect the food industry that made billions from free labor. You trying to tell me black folks wasn't picking string beans, corn? So black people wasn't in the cornfields? Really? Sugar cane? Where did you get strawberries from? Who picked them? Because we know a lot of Hispanics picking it now. Who picked the strawberries back then? Who harvested all the grapes? Who gathered all the apples off the apple trees down south? Who gathered all the watermelons, cantaloupes that Americans was eating? Who worked in the wheat fields? Who picked all the food? Who grew all the food for free? So that all these General Mills and all these companies, how did they really get rich? Open up the books. How did all the cereal companies, how did they really get rich? We know the South is not famous for cotton. The South is famous for food. The whole cotton thing is a trick too. To say cotton, cotton, to hide all the food we work for. All that land was cleared down there by slaves. The land in the South had trees. when you go down south and you see all that flat land, slaves made that like that. That land wasn't like that. That land had swamps and stuff like that. Many slaves got bit by alligators, snakes, clearing that land, making that land clear. And they had us clear the land. And once the land got so clear and stuff, they said, okay, we don't need you no more. Go up north. We got it from here. Thank you for clearing the land and help creating this flat farmland, because America was not no flat land. Where'd all the trees go down there? When you go and you look at the farmland, you see all them acres flat like that. Who made that like that? Because we know when they came to America, it was trees and lumps and valleys, and America wasn't flat. Down south wasn't flat like that. Who made it flat? This is where the story comes, where they had the black babies and they would use them for alligator bait, because there was alligators and everything down there, snakes and everything. And black people had to clear that land and level that land. We didn't just pick the crops. We the ones that worked the land, that made the land where you can even grow. Who believes America was flat like that, where you could just grow food? Who made it flat? When you go to Alabama, when you go to Mississippi, when you drive and see acres and acres of corn, who made that land flat like that where you can grow all that stuff? I was going to Alabama in the 60s. Clear the Red River and give Captain Shreve all the credit. Exactly. Exactly. Everybody in New Orleans know, Texas, all that know. Who made that land where you can have them cattle on it like that, and that grazing land for them cattle? There wasn't no grazing land in this country for no doggone cattle like that. Who flattened that land for the cattle? Who built the American food industry? So you telling me you got slaves and you didn't make the slaves work on nothing but cotton? Really? So you got free labor and you didn't maximize that free labor to get it to do everything you needed? They didn't have to grow no food, just cotton. You was eating cotton. What was Americans eating? Cotton? Who funded the steam engines? The steam engines was funded by slavery. And the steamship was used to bring the product from the South up to Mississippi quicker, so they can load up the steamboats, the steam engines, and get more stuff up the north and take it up and then just go across the country instead of all the way from there. Our free labor built the whole steam engine up and down the Mississippi. This is history. The steam engines were put together to bring more bales of cotton, more fruit, more vegetables, more peanuts. When I went down south, there was peanuts everywhere. Who grew the peanuts and who picked all those peanuts that Americans was eating at all these baseball games and then all these candy bars and then all these treats? Who created the peanut industry? Peaches, plums, nectarines, watermelons. You're telling me slavery that you didn't use free labor for that? You just used it for cotton? You didn't make them grow your food? You got free labor. I know if I had free labor, I'd make them do everything. I'd make them do everything we need. I wouldn't have slaves. Well, you just do the cotton. We're going to pay workers to do the food and all that. Who believed that? Who believed they didn't make the slaves do everything they needed? Who don't believe that? And who don't believe the banks got rich because who funded the seeds? Who funded the equipment? Who funded the land? The banks. Which when the banks wanted to come and collect and evict people, that's what started the Civil War. Because the banks began to foreclose on the slave owners that went broke, that couldn't afford a lot of slaves. that couldn't pay their bills to the north. A lot of Ivy League schools invested. Not only invested, no, not invested, was built. Was built. Was built. Anybody with any sense, Jermaine, knows that if you got slaves, you're going to make them do everything. So I'm not doing all that with you today. Yeah, I'm not doing all that. Not today. Go figure it out. I'm not doing all that. I'm not doing all that. I'm talking common sense. You're not going to have no free labor and not use them for everything. I'm talking common sense. You're not going to have free labor and not make them do everything. If you got free labor and you can make money on all these different crops, you're going to make that free labor do everything. This is common sense. And of course, if you don't want to pay them, you're going to say cotton and tobacco. So now you can pretend like you don't know how you're going to pay them. Because if you say they did all this stuff, then now you got the money. If you include the food industry, you got the money. If you include the banking systems, if you include everybody that made money from slavery, reparations is not a problem. So you say cotton and you say the taxpayers got to pay it. That's a scam. That way you protect the banks, Wells Fargo, Chase Bank. You protect the clothing industry that sold slave clothes. I just played that video. Because the slave owners had to get clothes. So clothing industry sent them the stuff to dress the slaves. You had to get equipment for the slaves to use. They made money. We're going to use common sense that you just don't got slaves. There's equipment involved. There's clothing involved. You're going to have all type of businesses involved in slavery. It's intentionally hidden. So now if you hide all these businesses, you hide that. Then when we ask for reparations, you say, well, tax dollars, because you're hiding the people that got the money. And I really don't talk to nobody that don't, and you act like you understand what I'm saying, then go watch something else. Because what I'm saying is clear. They're hiding the corporations that's got the billions and trillions of dollars for investing in slavery and try to pretend that the money got to come from tax dollars. Tell me that makes some sense. Why would taxpayers have to pay for something that Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase Bank, the railroad, and all these companies made the money? Why they don't got to pay? Why they always say tax dollars? Am I lying? Every time we ask for reparations, don't they say, well, why should white taxpayers pay for it? That's not a trick. What do white taxpayers got to do with Chase Bank, Wells Fargo, and all these companies that made billions? Why they never say the cotton industry? Why they never say the tobacco industry, the sugar industry, the farming industry? We did all the farming. We did all the farming. And when they abolished slavery, we were still in Alabama, Mississippi, farming, Georgia. When I was going down, my grandfather was still farming. So you telling me everything my grandfather was growing in Alabama, they wasn't growing during slavery? He just started growing it after slavery? All them peanuts my grandfather had, all of them crops. So you telling me that the slaves wasn't taking care of the cattle down there? Where was the beef coming from? Where was Americans getting beef from? And who was taking care of the cows? Where was America getting pork from? Who was taking care of the pigs? So you telling me you got slaves and you're not going to use that free labor to take care of the horses, the cows, the pigs? So you're gonna have free labor for the cotton and you're gonna pay people to do the other stuff when you got free black people nobody care about? You're not gonna make black people do everything? Really? Does that make sense? Does that make sense that if they got free slaves, they're not gonna make them do everything? Because I would. Why would I pay anybody to do anything if I got these people down here nobody care about? Make it make sense. Why wouldn't they make the slaves do everything? So you telling me they got people there just picking cotton and they got other workers doing the other stuff? Seriously? Who believes that? So you have the slaves clear all the land and then you bring in other people to do the work instead of making the slaves do everything once they clear the land? So the slaves didn't pick the peanuts? All the slaves did was cotton and tobacco? Who believes that? Anybody with common sense believes you got free labor and you're only going to make them do that? Who believes that? Rather than thinking that they're not going to mention other products because what? That leads you to what? The money for reparations. They're protecting the other businesses because that's the reparations money. They're protecting the clothing industry. They're protecting the railroad. They're protecting the banks. They're protecting the Ivy League schools. They're protecting everybody that invested in it because then they would have to give you reparations from them companies and they wouldn't be lying pretending it's got to come from taxpayers. Because reparations does not have to come from taxpayers, have to come from whoever made the money. The taxpayers didn't make the money. So where's the money? Why do they keep saying that the government got to take tax dollars to pay reparations and never bring up the companies that got the money from the free labor, that built a multi-trillion-dollar businesses from the free labor? Why don't they ever mention them when it comes to reparations? Why? I got somebody come up, well, I just know it's just always coming over. I just know it's just cotton and tobacco. They don't mention them with reparations either when you get to sabotaging my conversation. Show me when they talk about reparations that they even bring up tobacco and cotton. They don't bring them up either. So please be quiet because you're just validating what I'm saying. Every time they talk about reparations, they say tax dollars. Do they ever say tobacco and cotton have to pay it? No. That's my point. Do they ever say tobacco or cotton has to pay the reparations? No, they always say the taxpayers, the taxpayers. That's a trick to make white Americans. Why should we pay it? That's not a trick. That's not a trick to say taxpayers so white Americans say no. So they use the taxpayer to protect the big businesses. Because that's what it looked like to me. It looked like every time we ask for reparations, they say the taxpayers to protect the big businesses. So we never think, no, what about the big businesses that make trillions? Why they don't have to pay it? They got trillions. They got trillions of dollars. They got the billions. Well, they know that they can pay it, but they don't want to equal, they don't want Black Americans to have no financial equal so that white Americans can stay dominant. They got the money to pay it. The problem is they don't want us to get no equal footing. It has nothing to do with who got the money. It has something to do with don't give us no money when we got equal footing with white Americans, what we can go in business and do for ourselves. Keep us under them so they can make money off us. They're going to make less money off of us if we get reparations. They're going to make money at first, but they know we're going to develop our own businesses. So they want to keep us under so that they can eat off of us. That's why they keep redirecting to taxes. What the tax got to do with who got the money. So they'll never send me to Trump. They'll never send me to Washington because I'll shut the whole thing down. Why do you keep bringing up tax dollars? What about all the white businesses that made money? Where is that money? Why you keep trying to fool me talking about taxpayers got to buy it? When you know damn well Wells Fargo, Chase Bank, and all these big companies, the cotton industry, the tobacco industry, the food industry got the money. The clothing industry, the railroads got the money. The transportation industry was built off of free labor. You're telling me that slavery didn't help build the steamships and the steamships didn't turn to other ships and planes and all that? You're telling me you didn't take none of that money from the steamship and the railroad industry that we funded and invest that into the entire transportation industry? Tell it to somebody else. We know that money went into the entire transportation industry. We know that if you got steamships and that business starts to slow down, what they're going to do? They're going to take that money from the steamship industry. They're going to invest it into what? Other transportation industry, the auto industry, the boat industry, the plane industry. That's where that money went. I'm not stupid. I know business. You're not going to just let the steam engine industry crash without investing that. Where did all these barges come from? Where did the money come from? All these barges that go up and down the Mississippi. It came from the steamboat industry. Steamboats turned into what? Barges. Steamboats turned into barges. Same money. You telling me the same company not going up and down the Mississippi, just using different types of ships? It's the same companies. All them barges going up and down the Mississippi, that's slave money. There is no transportation like that up and down the Mississippi without that free money. It's a known fact that blacks picking cotton and picking them crops created the steamboat industry because they needed more to get the product to the north. They did not need all them steamships without filling them with cotton and food. And they sabotaging us just trying to show cotton. That's a trick. That's a trick. And they always talk about cotton, but they never talk about cotton paying. That's a trick. How do you keep talking about us picking cotton, but when it comes to reparation, you never mention the cotton industry paying? When the cotton industry alone got enough money to pay out reparations, just that one industry could pay reparations. It wouldn't hurt them none. They got multi-trillions of dollars. Reparations is only billions. It ain't even trillions. It might be 1 trillion, but they got trillions. Does this not look like this created the steamboat industry? This came up on steamships. This did not come up on no trains. This came up on steamships, and it was easy now to transport it crossways instead of all the way from the south. Let it go up. You ain't got to buy no gas too much or nothing. Just go up to Mississippi and then go across to where you got to go. And then that's when they built all them steamboats where they would gamble and laugh and giggle with our money and go up and down the Mississippi gambling with our money, having a good time. While they going up and down the Mississippi, they watching their product. So they on fun steamships going behind the ones with the money, watching their product go up and down. I'm just saying. Black History Month validates reparations. And we got to turn up our intelligence to get our reparations. They're not going to keep talking about it got to come from tax dollars. That's the first thing I want to put out. Tell everybody that. Tell everybody that. We're not going to accept them keep pretending that tax dollars got to pay reparations and give the corporations that made trillions a pass. Why they never mention the corporations that was built off the backs of slavery? Why don't they have to pay reparations? Why do they keep trying to say as taxpayers to make white Americans be against reparations? Because if the companies had to pay it, white Americans would be for it. They'll be like, fine. If they made the money, let them pay. But you try to tell white Americans they got to pay to make them say, no, I don't want to pay for it, which is true. Why should white Americans pay for something that Chase Bank, Wells Fargo, and all these companies was the one get rich? Why don't they have to pay it? All the talking heads tell all the talking heads to repeat this. Why don't the multi-trillion dollar companies that made money from reparations have to pay, from slavery, have to pay reparations? Why don't the multi-trillion dollar companies in North America, including Canada, that made trillions and trillions of dollars from slavery, why are they never mentioned when it comes to paying reparations? Why do they keep pretending it's got to come from tax dollars? That's what I want you to push. Get on that mission. Get that out there. Make content saying that so we can clean that up to take the conversation off of taxpayers. We got to do that, okay? Stand on business. Make that happen. Seriously. Stand on business and make that happen. Victory.